All right. Angle planning and simplicity in level design. I want to touch upon those two things after we've playtested quite a lot of complex, needlessly complex maps on Map Inc. And I want to really start this video with making an example out of DE Inferno and how simple the B-bomb side really is. Why don't we start with how Banana is, how can it get away with being so simple? So that was a cool detail that I noticed. Look at this. Anyway, Banana, it's very controversial throughout the ages of it being so simple, yet so effective. People say that people hate the nade spamminess of it, but some people absolutely love it, and the dynamic that it brings to the whole map. And A bomb site and the A area can be so complex with paired up with Banana at the end of the day. There's a dynamic that no other map really, in my opinion, does utilize, of having such a simple area and such a complex area next to it. First of all, why does the Inferno get away with having Banana? It has to do with the No Man's Land zone, which both the CTs and Ts get to dominate with utility. So probably in like 5,000 elo games right now in CS2, you don't really see that much of utility spamming and early grenades. But when it gets to around like 10k, you will notice that Banana is absolutely covered in utility. And the higher you go, the more variation in early round utility you will find. So higher skilled players will often opt out for using like one utility, and because players can rely on their aim better, they will pretty much like peek the molly or smoke it and just like pretty much conserve their utility. Anyway, the No Man's Land element of Banana allows for it to be so simple yet have such a unique gameplay. When it comes to the simplicity, it's also a straight, or I guess a banana, but a straight path, which you can see the goal at the end of it. It doesn't rely on any like gimmicks of like actually blocking up sightline, cutting it in two, and I think that's why it feels so samey throughout all its versions of actually having this like maintaining this sightline. If any of the versions really messed up with this sightline, like the early CS:GO version did, before the remake where they removed all the pillars. Thank God that's not in the game anymore. That version really sucked, but it still maintained like this sightline with adding like tons of clutter on that side. But yeah, the simplicity. You don't need a very complex structure in your level to make it interesting. What makes it interesting is the utility and the power dynamic of actually switching control of it within like snap moments in the gameplay. Also, when we get to the B-bomb side, I want to talk a little bit about the choices that players have to do. So it's kind of rare that terrorists actually push through B-bomb side and actually passed it to A-bomb side to flank A. That is doable, but the main objective here is just to get to the bomb site. And we have one position to really focus your utility over. Of course, you can have a molly in coffins that you should have, or at least smoke it off like this. So now the two entrances to the bomb sites are covered for 18 seconds, that is. But the simplicity, it's very simple, and most like new mappers I see go with like very complex geometry on their bomb sites, and let's be honest, simple and good is really hard to do. It's really hard to make yourself remove all the like seemingly needed complexity from your level geometry. But just look at this. It's just a courtyard with a little bit of clutter in the middle to spice up. If this was just flat, it would be so much more boring. But because this is just like it's a tax on the movement it creates this dynamic where players are really forced to play around it. So rarely you will find players just like jumping up onto the fountain, because how jumping how it taxes the players, the aim. So yeah, and all the positions in the bomb site are like kind of tacked on in the back. So yeah, that's the first point, simplicity. The pair of this point, simplicity, is met with complexity in angles, angle planning, and pacing. I wanna tie those two things together. Angle planning and pacing. What I mean with pacing, first of all, let's say that you have already gotten banana control out of the way. You've pushed as a T. You've managed to get up until this point, right? Complexity in angles and pacing. What I mean by that, let's say that you know that there's no one here. You have pre-mollied. We need to stop calling this car. We need to start calling this barrels. And maybe this position could be logs again. I don't know what Valve really want to do about that. But like when we call barrels, there needs to be one barrels in banana, in my opinion. There are too many barrels. The complexity in angles and the pacing. Look at this. So the first fight happens here. Let's say that we don't have to worry about this anymore. There is this much of pacing that is pretty much like dead space, and I use it in the terms that like even lower skilled players can understand. Obviously, for a higher skilled player, this would be called an off-angling space, but let's call it dead space because it offers no cover, and the second position that you have to watch is this angle over here. And I want to praise Valve for actually introducing this shadow and this trim, this line here, that really contrasts with the angle well. So you can actually, when a player is there, you will see this shadow and it matches up perfectly with the line. That's very good. So there's this much of this wall that you don't have to necessarily worry about. And the next angle from this first point of interest within the game, within the map, the second point of interest from a counter-terrorist default angle is over here. Guess where the second one is? Hint, hint. It's the concrete bags. So look at the dead space between this angle up until concrete bags. It's quite a long stretch, and that creates a good pacing with how hard concrete bags is to clear without utility, and paired up with this angle. So that this is usually a shotgun angle. There's someone with a mag 7 there, or an XM. So if this map or if this position was any tighter, it would feel way more spammy. Also from utility standpoint, if this area was any smaller, it would totally be engulfed up in flames and terribly T-sided then. If a T molly would like engulf all of this in molly, all of this in molly, there's no space for CT iteration anymore within positioning, and like it would be so easy to just clear everything of top banana with one molly. I mean, you can clear this, but like still, it's giving enough of positioning advantage for CTs when they push up close. Then, like there's enough of variation. So you have to put as a map maker, you have to realize where the space is needed. And again, the pacing. Look at this. First fight over here. Second fight. This much of dead space that you don't have to worry about when peeking. Necessarily. There could be someone off-angling, obviously. But yeah. There's second position here. Spacing. Third position. Did I say opinion? I meant to say position. Here. And then fourth. That's what I mean with pacing. And I really need for more players when they're more players and map makers when they're actually talking about maps to actually use like certain terminology to come up with like language when we speak about map making. And it's so hard that there is no one like guidebook to how to make a good level. There are tons of opinionated level design articles and videos and blogs and shit like that really go in depth into certain design aspects and how to introduce them to your designs. But every article that I see, they use like different terminology, but there are like certain hints and guidelines to what means what. And but as map makers, as like as like designers of these levels, we have to come up with correct terminology that we can use and everyone understands what they mean. But pacing definitely is one of those things that you really have to explain, and it's kind of a, it's not a new concept, but for some people it's still missing in their designs. Let's continue with the pacing. So after you've gotten top banana, we peak CT. If it's not smoked, and I'm talking about like not using utility here, I'm just talking about like how to enter raw and shit like that. So let's say like that CT gets smoked. The first fight is over here, and look at the pacing. There's this much of negative space or dead space here that is not used by default CT positioning. I love how deep this is as well. Like you really have to clear this now. This much of dead space that CTs cannot really use for covered classic default positioning. The second position is coffins and under there. So there are like two coffin positions. Then here is another position of spacing. So, sorry, pacing. This white wall. And it's actually quite nice how Valve didn't add like any obstructive detail into these like this quote unquote pacing areas, how flat they are, to actually give you that feel of you're not having to worry about like all of this, and your focus just shifts all the way from here all the way back there. Imagine there being like two red doors, a fucking vent, a window. It's like if this was there, then it would be like way worse. When it comes to CT defensive positions, like the terrorists will be pushing through here, and the T's will often be off-angled because like they're changing their positions from here to here. The CTs, how Counter-Strike works, they're usually sitting in one position, and what really deviates a great CT player from like a normal CT player is that how well they can play the T side kind of on CT side. Like how well can they change their positioning and aggress on the defensive side whilst actually doing their work on as a defender of a bomb site as well. The pacing on B-bomb side, so we have the clear back wall. Now in this position we also have to start worrying about like close angles, like first oranges. Also we have to come up with better callouts for these. Maybe like first stack, second stack. The names have to be super simple and relative to the current version of the map. We cannot be sticking with callouts like car or second and first oranges. They're just, for new players, also with CS2, the rising player numbers really mean that the skill ceiling for new players it's higher with like awkward callouts. You know, if you're calling out car, the new players will be like, what the fuck here? It's just like confusing to new players. So maybe the player community will have to come up with better names now. Continuing with the pacing point, second position is like dark. Then we have this pillar. Often CTs are playing behind this and maybe back there. But again, with the same point of there being so much dead space here, all the red that you can pretty much see in the back, or like kind of it's like a salmon color, that you don't really have to worry about like this conceptually in your mind. You want to be pre-firing your crosshair placement in general. Like when people teach you about how to get better in Counter-Strike, they tell you about crosshair placement. So it really, what they mean is that you position your crosshair to where an expected CT position would be, and that mentality also plays into the pacing. Like when they teach you crosshair placement, they're not talking about oh, in this map there is generally this area that players don't default position in, so you don't have to talk about that. They just go to they talk about the default CT positions, and that's what I mean with pacing as well. All this ties together so nicely. It's really nice to talk about that. When it comes to, I don't really want to go to the rest of the map because B bomb site on Inferno does it so well. It's such a great example of great pacing and how a simple design can go so far. I mean, 20 years. It's truly you know, has understayed its welcome. There are many years of Inferno left. So yeah. Also with like A bomb site, the map is complex when it comes to the interiors, and it can, for new players, I would imagine this map being like Inferno being like kind of hard to learn. And still, it is really hard to learn even for like experienced players coming back to CS from like CS:GO, and you know, if you've had any pause within your counter striking, then it's, you know, it's kind of rough to come back and relearn this map. A side as well. I can make an example of this, how simple it is, yet the complexity comes from angles as well, and your player positioning. I don't want to go into that too much, so I probably shouldn't. But yeah, when it comes to maps, when you make your map, think about what is the least amount of map that I need to get the most amount of gameplay out of the map, the area. What is the least amount of map that required for the most amount of gameplay? Also the pacing. Go check a couple of the latest playtest videos that I uploaded. And just like a couple of first rounds, and you will notice how busy the bomb site entrances, middles, every area the map has. And then there are just like some dead zones with like no, like too much spacing, that it's just boring. It's just pretty much like running like this from one area to another. And pacing could also be tied to how engaging the area is to navigate through. I've always hated Inferno T-spawn, but it gets a pass. It's kind of taxing, like running, but it's very engaging when it comes to, you really have to like look at your screen when you're navigating this. Like, you cannot be watching like fucking TikTok on your phone when you're running through this. Also here, I just love how one-to-one it is with the original version, and I really admire just sticking with a theme, sticking with an idea through all these years. That also to new map makers, I really love when people talk about layouts and really hone in the layouts, and that's what really map making is about, just the marriage of your original idea and external feedback. Damn, I'm really bad at keeping and staying on topic. I need to work on that. But anyway, this has been a little video. Hope you like it. Stay safe and happy mapping. Bye bye.